Squad goals. What's up, y'all? Man, listen, I got bright lights, and you really know you made it to the big time when you got a clicker. I got a clicker. This is wonderful. It's certainly a pleasure to be before you today, to have this opportunity to converse with you. Really, what I hope is organically. There'll be some things that we talk about today. So today's kind of professional development is structured in a way where we give a little bit of background, maybe unlock your chi and your chakra in a way in which you haven't yet onboarded information in a very staccato and short order form. So if it seems like a lot in a little bit, that's intended, but also there's an opportunity embedded in that to do some more work and to have some further discussions, not only later on, but also as you take the torch and you leave the threshold of this auditorium, this beautiful auditorium, I might add. Let me take a moment of reverence here. This is, didn't have this now. Everything that I do is an extension of my family and my lived experience. And so, you know, my mom was a only child, Jersey girl, boardwalk. And my dad and my grandfather is a sharecropper in Mississippi, Cleveland, Mississippi. And Cleveland, Mississippi is the Mississippi Delta, where it's really clear that everybody is struggling from the same stuff. Cleveland, Mississippi is the direct opposite of Rochester, New York. Rochester, New York is ranked #1 city in wealth to poverty disparity. It's rated the #2 city that's worse for black people. It is that way in part because of its historic significance. There is no film industry if we don't have Kodak. We don't need to stamp what that means over the last 100 years. There's some things that are here, and there's some level of accountability that we're hoping to have, and I think, and I'm pretty sure, and having talked with Scotty, having been a servant in the industry of education, that servitude is selfless. And I want to continuously harp on what it is that our professional modalities can and should be when we're in the service of education, regardless of what role we have within the system. I can remember a lot of people, and some that sit before me today, that poured into me in ways in which were authentic for them. Our youth have doctorates already. They have doctorates in behaviorisms. They understand people. If I walk into the school building and I walk into a 10th grade class and I tell me what teachers are leaving early, they're gonna say at 2:53, Miss Smith leaves with Mr. Choctaw. And for some reason, he carries her purse. They know everything. And the reason they know everything is because they must use the 5 spidey move collectively in that effort. Scientists say it's somewhere around like 98 and 99% the same every day on the planet. Bioactivity, order, so on and so forth. But here in this paradigm of socialization in the Americas, the white and the black, the have and the have-not, are lifted up in the way in which we are socialized, and it comes way before any of us even hit the map. So I want to ground some of our work today in a historical reverence. Because without history, we can't really talk about what's happening now, because the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. We're not going to spend a lot of time there, but it's important to unpack that. The other piece in the transition is the service of education. It's not an effort to say why we do what we do. I believe that everyone is coming in with the motivation that is important for them and the nature and the way in which they frame that in their lives. My point of intersectionality, and in part, you all's point of intersectionality within the system of education, is how is it that we recognize that somebody else might not have been socialized the same way we were? The same thing that means something for them doesn't have that same weight. And then what is my effective responsibility in the service of education to honor and recognize where I'm at, but more importantly, in this space, when on the job, acquiesce to listening and being active in that space of finding out what happens when kids are telling us already what they want. This is only about children. In your own life, do I hope that you find a membrane of risk to take and draw closer to communities of color? For sure, no question. Do I want you to understand what implicit bias is, and how is it that through socialization from cradle to career, we've been pushed along these paradigms of learning? Some in an unjust way? Absolutely. But this hour and a half is what you can do for the kids. How you can remain calm, cool, and collected, and also very, very active in the process of scaffolding real experiential learning opportunities to kids in real time. My mom and my dad grounded me. My dad was super disciplined. My mom was super love, and they knew how to each take a piece of the other and make that work. And in 1986, we did the HGTV thing. Anybody like HGTV or? I thought I might have had some folks up in here like that. Yeah, what channel are you watching on? I don't know. We had the real light version. So, I'm born on Post and Ravenwood in the 19th Ward. I grew up on Thurston Avenue. That's my full layer of immersion. And in 1986, we did the HGTV thing because there were some people in our church family that believed in us and found a way to support us and allow us to move into Penfield. And we got the smallest house right across the street from Mercy High School. Just as soon as you turn off the highway, boop, boop, there it is. Big backyard, beautiful backyard, football fields, games, jokes, laughs, parties, everything. But you want to know what it did? It anchored me in the language of commerce. It anchored me in standard American English. I know what happened if the party was off the Yelzabal. I am proficient in African American vernacular English, but I, in every moment, have the ability, and at any moment, have the ability to code switch, which is a utility for me. It's like I speak two languages. And I'd argue the way in which I use it around the world, I speak way more languages than that. Necesito practicarlo mucho, pero entiendo así, porque soy un maestro en Nueva York. If I'm a teacher in Spanish Harlem, what do I look like not trying to actively be involved in a layer of immersion where the kids are already at and function readily? I have to humble myself to know I don't know what you're going through. I don't even know what you're saying, but I'm going to try to show you that I can do something. And 15 years later, I can order food, go to the restroom, and do the things I need to do around the world. I had to strip layers off of myself. Many people don't. Like young kids in the city of Rochester, you have to know some African American vernacular English to get to school safe. You're up at 5:30, you got one bus or a car ride to the transit center, 2 bus rides to school, might not have had breakfast. Some folks can just get up and go. Everything along my journey was an opportunity. That HGTV move was an opportunity. That was a life-saving and a life-changing opportunity. I don't know what would have happened, but I know how to count my blessings. Many young person that identified within the demographic, young brown people in our school systems, expressed many a different way in which they felt based on any experience they had. I made Penfield great for me. And there were a lot of people along the way that helped in that process. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't come without an understanding of what it would be to be a person within the demographic and moving in an education system that might not be form-fitted for me. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, and that's not an indictment. It just is. I want you to tell me, by a show of hands, where my Metallica versus Led Zeppelin people. Who's from Metallica? Hands up. Okay, I see you out there. Represent, that's right. Y'all got, Led Zeppelin, folks? I know Eddie this week. Gosh. Beatles or Rolling Stones? Beatles? Now, Rolling Stones. Crushing it. Like, Rolling Stones people put their hands up like, Beatles. That's funny. Michael Jackson or Prince? Oh, I heard somebody with this one. Michael Jackson. He always gets it. Prince. Those are the eclectic folks. Like, 2 hands for Prince. Y'all see what I saw? Ooh. This is a no-brainer, so. Yankees? Huh. Mets. I'm sorry. Mets. Let's get. Ooh, it's getting deeper now. Health or wealth? Health? Yeah, everybody. Yeah, it's not too deep. We all know that money doesn't mean anything until it means something. Here's the real big one. Mac or Windows? Mac? It ain't always but 5 of y'all. But you believe it too. They're like, psh. So, what led to that? Just because you have PCs in front of you? You got proficient on a PC? Mac feels funny? You picked up Mac when Mac first came and you really understand Mac systems. My dad loved the Yankees. There's a lot of subconscious thought that goes into what are all of the things that lead up to this. You know, I don't believe that it happens here, but in some places, they long-term suspend kindergarten and first graders. Children that are no taller than this TV when set on the ground. And the master educator, not the teacher, not the administrator, not the executive, the master educator in me has absolutely no proficiencies in understanding how we long-term suspend a kindergarten or a first grade. That's not an indictment. I'm not saying that section code rule in school number 23D 105 says if said student. We've missed an opportunity to deconstruct and reconstruct, and we have to be honest with whether or not we did so because there were some underlying things relative to the disposition of this young child, or we didn't want to deconstruct and reconstruct equally or more enhanced than to when we first got that young child, or I'm too focused on what I'm doing and I don't have the time, space, or energy to feed the needs of the child in that moment, or I have a natural proclivity to believe that that child is in need of additional services. I see a lot of kindergartners, first graders, second graders, high schoolers release trauma in the space, in the ecosystem of our classrooms, on our playgrounds, and about our school properties. But I believe each of those moments is a tailor-made suit. Part of my process being here is the tailor-made suit that your executive level administration would have for you because they have a vision for what Penfield could and should be, and although it's almost there, there's still some stuff that can be done. There's still some ways in which we can ingratiate ourselves to the service of education in the presence of children. Many times, and I'd argue, unless you're a coach, I don't mean educational coach, coaching teachers, but we'll talk about advocacy and agency in the absence of children, and I think that there's a professional responsibility there. But our kids don't need tough love. They just need love. Any kid. Tough love might work, but who are they going to be later in spite or despite that tough love? Our kids need an authentic love from you, wherever you are. Whether you're greeting them at the front door or shutting down the mowers so that they can have a little space to run through and taking that professional courtesy. Speaking a language of love. Did you know it takes one negative thing to erase 10 positive? So we need to bifurcate that. We need to split that in two. What words are coming out of my mouth? And who's in my sphere of influence and how are they talking to me? You don't need to be in the school building to take that. You can take that and run that all the way back to the house and around the neighborhood and in your interpersonal lives, etc. What happens at 7, 8 o'clock affects what happens at 10 o'clock. That language of love is life-saving for children. I walk into any school building. Individuals that have been identified as 504 have IEPs, EDLD. They're not in school suspension. They're down at Miss Martino's room. And I walk into Miss Martino's room, and you would think that that doesn't look like class to me. Why are all of these kids here? They're here because she loves them in her authentic way. And it happens at every school building I go to. I don't care if it's the babies or the big ones. We need some Miss Martino in our process. I don't care if we're facilitating any aspect of our jobs and our roles within education. These gentlemen back here on the IT, they got a role to play. It's not I just do music. It's I am a part of the music experience for youth in the township of Penfield. And I'm looking for active ways to bring youth in any sphere of influence that I touch because I am involved in this process of servitude. Servants get paid less, but do more. Not get paid less and do less. Let's calibrate what is implicit bias. So let's just unpack the definition for a nanosecond. And we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I want to let you know this is all subconscious. Much of this stuff is not even decisions that you're actively making. We're talking about mental associations of groups. It doesn't always even have to be groups of people, but in this case, we're going to talk about interpersonal relationships. Below the conscious layer of awareness. So, let yourself off the hook for a second. Recognize we're not talking about something that you're choosing to do in just a moment. You're not trying to be mean. We're not trying to be mean. We're not trying to harm children. Subconscious. Almost autopilot. Followed by, and this is the most difficult part of it, is because I've been socialized this way, it subconsciously makes me act towards a group of people one way, or a group of something one way. I create dissonance between this and that. I create space in my life between this and that. Again, remember we talked about before, have-nots, white, black, this, that. That dichotomy reigns supreme here, specifically in the Americas. How many choices do we get for a president? Oh, no, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Perceptions of others. It is what is perceived, but the thing about perceptions is it's a real slippery slope. Things that are perceived real are real in their consequences. I'll tell you now, the consequences and the things that I felt as a black man and a young black man are valid. I'm not waiting around for somebody to validate me. I had to go get a PhD so that I validated myself so I could tell you things that I knew 15 years ago and now we could believe me. That's the only reason, other than to bring honor to my family name, that I even went to achieve the degree. Because I never want to sit down at a table, and this is part of the Penfield in me, and be told that I'm not capable of doing something. You can tell me you don't want me. I'm cool with that. But you can't tell me I'm not qualified. And so there's an element of power, but also an element of access that's embedded in that as well. I don't want to just say things and not tether them to what's real. I didn't make this stuff up. Rochester is the second worst city based on that matrix. Median household income, wealth to poverty disparity. 24 Wall Street is down in New York City. That's not the Democrat and Chronicle trying to throw shade on the town. Monroe County has a role to play. County, that encompasses the city. How many people work in the city of Rochester but pay taxes in the suburbs? Let's just say a whole bunch. Community Foundation did a study. They said it's almost like $700 million a year. We can't talk about communities need to pick themselves up by their bootstrap when $700 million of what could be potential income for them is no longer in their municipality. Now, that's not an indictment. There are jobs to be had. Rochester has been booming for a long time. But we got to get away from that table talk conversation a little bit. We got to get away from that supper time conversation about what are the parents. The parents are strapped. The dads are in jail. The emasculation of the brown man has been going on since COINTELPRO. I know I'm getting a little deep here. It's been happening for years. This is not just civil rights. What is our responsibility when we're teaching kids when we're in a petri dish such as Rochester? If I have an opportunity to leverage my experience or my privilege or my ability to calibrate my emotional filter in a way in which I know kids don't have, we don't have that expectation for them, then it's incumbent upon me. Think about it like this. The problem for kids is also the answer. It's real easy. If I walk into a school building and I grab a young brown king and I say, man, what do you want to be? He's going to tell me he wants to be a basketball player, a sports player, or a rapper. That might not be the case if I walk into Penfield. But why is that? If I want to control people, a group of people 100 years ago, how do I control them? I control them through their 5 senses: what they eat, where they go, how they move. Right? Can you get kale at the corner store? Can I go to Clinton Avenue and walk into a bodega and get organic chicken? Not do I have enough money for it, can I get it? When a young person tells me that they want to be LeBron James or they want to be Little Uzi Vert or pick a name, guess what they just told me? They looked me dead in my eye and they felt real passionate about being Kobe Bryant. But that's not what I heard. I heard, I want the American dream. I want to put my sister in private school, I want to buy my mom a house, and I want to get on a G5 plane and go to a country I may or may not be able to spell. That's what I heard. But when I look at the TV, the image of what I see is these are the people that make it. It's very clear that these are the people that make it when they look like this. I don't see a lot of Dr. Willis's out there. I mean, I try to get out there as much as possible. If we teach our kids about history and identity, if we help them identify themselves, if we help love them up in our space, if we help scaffold real legitimate learning opportunities with them, if we do it in a way which is authentic and organic, then we can pour into the way in which they visualize themselves. You can't control the way they look at themselves, but you can help identify for them the blessing that you see before you. And I don't care if the kid is quadriplegic or the best athlete in school. It's the same child. Education is a huge one. If it's being done inequitably, then we see what comes out on the outcome-based measures. It's well documented across the United States. When school is not done well, children are in need of remediation and oftentimes fall through the cracks. We are the greatest nation in the world. Undoubtedly, 33% of our kids drop out every year. How are we not at every state board doorstep advocating for children that aren't in Penfield. But let's just talk about the ones that are. That's a travesty. There's a reason we don't rank in the top 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 12%. It's because our system is a little bit broken. We've gotten away from using the science of understanding, right? Like, our kids are changing before us. I would not put regular gasoline in a Ferrari. I would not. We have Ferrari children. They are dynamic. They are in need. They are evolving. They are taking their atoms and clashing them up against anything in order to find out what is that. So part of us also has to reduce to what was I thinking in that space when I was said age. The last one is the criminal justice system. They play a part because it becomes a commodification and larger systems are built. Slate is an entity that does research, and they find really unique ways to graphically depict things. So I'm going to play this content in an effort to take 2 minutes to talk about everything that happened prior to and throughout the transatlantic slave trade. These are only the documented cases. They have an active YouTube page and also, I think, on their base website that you can hit and see essentially what was delivered on that boat during the time. Oh, jazz, I love the jazz. That was my man. What's my man? Motown jazz too, is even better. Got to pull down the PowerPoint. You guys probably want to see the video, huh? God, sheesh. See it now? Yay or nay? Yay. The bigger the dot, the bigger the boat. The more people, the more vessels, the more sugar, the more pepper. These are just the documented cases. Anybody believe that there were some boats on the water that might be taking people illegally? These are just the ones that were signed on papyrus. I'm not going to get into why Black Lives Matter. But, geesh, this sure seemed like a whole system in the 1600s and 1700s. the 17th and the 18th and the 19th century. A lot of people think the hustle was to get them into the Caribbean, as you see that line, and then get them up through Cuba and some of the ways up and through the Americas. Pretty easy to see why after we stopped the practice of slavery on paper, that the transactions of slavery were still taking place. I think sometimes people do a good job of finding very short, effective ways in which to highlight information, and also to allow us the opportunity to see and re-see in ways in which we might not have previously conceptualized. If I go to 250 and 441, anybody familiar with this intersection? For some reason, maybe Scotty, as I know him, I call him Scotty. It's hard for me not to call Scotty. Mr. Drechsler was running and jogging and staying physically fit. Sounds about right. And I just stopped my car in the middle of the street, put down my window, about 5:45 in the afternoon, just locked up traffic so that he and I could converse. What might happen in that moment? If you come down Clinton Avenue and the car in front of you stops and locks up traffic, and Tyrone is talking to Pookie, and I know somewhere in this room I can hear you guys you're like, I wouldn't be driving down Clinton Avenue. I would say, you gonna beep on the horn the same way? Shirt off, britches halfway down. You gonna beep the horn the same way? Now, you might see what the other traffic is doing. At about 90 seconds, you might give the real soft. Woo-hoo. You ain't gonna lay on that horn. Because we're actively aware that we are no longer in an environment that is conducive to the way in which we process information and feel safe. There's some implicit bias stuff embedded in that moment. What is Tyrone doing? Why does he look like that? What's going on? Movement to the other side of the street. Holding on to the purse a little bit tighter. I've been alive a long time. No, I haven't. I've been alive 41 years. I'm thankful for all the ones I get, keep going. I've never seen a person of color snatch a purse. Not from anybody. Black History Month comes around, it usually comes in the same month. Our young people are kind of up and hip to our cadence of who's important in the eyes of history and historians as it comes through our curriculum. There's a lot of other ways to access valid people. This is one of my Black History Month heroes. They're not telling us about Joan Mulholland's. They don't want us to know in Texas, the people that form curriculum about Joan Mulholland's. You did 50 sit-ins before age 25. You knew it was going to be more than ketchup and mustard. You're talking about top level, top flight advocacy and agency that doesn't have to be everybody's plight, but we certainly need to take time to recognize true American heroes who were more tethered to their moral compass than they were to the way that the masses decided in that moment that they wanted to treat folks. Any of the good work in our country is not done in the absence of allies. How do we create the relational capacity to be allies in this space? She was disowned by her family, but her moral compass was more important. These people are my Black History Month heroes as well. How come Joan isn't there? How come she's not on page 56? How come every time in 5th and 4th grade social studies, our young brown kids of color have to start their understanding of self at transatlantic slave trade? We know levels of consciousness, what's prudent to cognitions of understanding identity. Let's start them back to the original kings and queens, but we don't have that history. Did you know that when a kid raises his hand and says, I need to use the bathroom, they're actually right? Because in African languages that are passed down orally, there are no digraphs. There's no TH sounds, there's no CH sounds. There's no three-letter consonant blends. So it's not, he asks a question. That's like I'm seeing. Right? It's, he asked a question. But we oftentimes don't even have our own content knowledge that has a broad enough base to recognize that this might actually be something, and it's not wrong, it's just different. I don't want to harm a kid because they took their time, they raised their hand, they used the proper social cue in order to be able to say that they had a physical need of their own that they needed to take care of and tend to like a pro. We want to acknowledge them and allow them access.
We're about to race. Everybody line up. Shoulder to shoulder. Take off your backpacks. Basketball, line up. We're about to race. Hey, we are racing for a $100 bill. The winner of this race will take this. It's a $100 bill. Before I say go, I'm going to make a couple statements. If those statements apply to you, I want you to take 2 steps forward. If those statements don't apply to you, I want you to stay right where you're at. Take 2 steps forward if both of your parents are still married. Take 2 steps forward if you grew up with a father figure in the home. Take 2 steps forward if you had access to a private education. Take 2 steps forward if you had access to a free tutor growing up. Take 2 steps forward if you've never had to worry about your cell phone being shut off. Take 2 steps forward if you've never had to help mom or dad with the bills. Take 2 steps forward if it wasn't because of your athletic ability, you don't have to pay for college. Take 2 steps forward if you never wondered where your next meal was going to come from. I want you guys up here in the front just to turn around and look. Every statement I've made has nothing to do with anything any of you have done. Has nothing to do with decisions you've made. Everything I have said has nothing to do with what you've done. We all know these people up here have a better opportunity to win this $100. Does that mean these people back here can't race? No. We would be foolish to not realize we've been given more opportunity. We don't want to recognize that we've been given a head start. But the reality is we have. Now, there's no excuse. They still got to run their race. You still got to run your race. But whoever wins this $100, I think it'd be extremely foolish of you not to utilize that and learn more about somebody else's story. Because the reality is, if this was a fair race and everybody was back on that line, I guarantee you some of these black dudes would smoke all of you. And it's only because you have this big of a head start that you're possibly going to win this race called life. That is a picture of life, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing you've done has put you in the lead that you're in right now. When I say go, on your mark, get set, go! If you didn't learn anything from this activity, you're a fool.
One thing that's really important for me is to have honest moments. And in full disclosure, I would have been able to take a half of one step because it was really important for me to have my dad in the house, but on Thanksgiving Day 1990, my parents let us know that they were going to get divorced. I've certainly been in situations to have to help my folks with the bills. My dad has a third-grade education. He used to tell me the stories about how he used to lay lower than the cotton. And then he learned that he needed to put down a rucksack because them bugs will bite you. And then he would ask me questions like, son, do you know how hot the sun is in Mississippi? So being a son who wants to show dad, when I went and got my PhD, I was in Mississippi. So I said, hey, Dad, I know how hot the sun is in Mississippi. And he said, how about without air conditioning? I said, ooh, got me again. You know, there's a lot of humility in process. I think humility is a significant portion of a daily dose of what we need to have when we're in the service of education. I know that this is what kids identify with and extrapolate from. Many of you all already have changed lives, if not each and every one of you, not only with the folks that are in your sphere of influence. Your abilities and people that you know's abilities that were here before you, they changed my life. I am a rose that made it through the concrete. I recognize I'm less than 1% of America, a black male with a PhD. But I stand before you specifically here in the town of Rochester because we need help. I can't take my talents around the world. I can go anywhere, really. One, because I worked hard to prove myself trustworthy and capable. Not that there needs to be a two. One thing that we can do when we're going into teaching about the utility of what we can use the moment that we get out of here to help shape and change not only our lives, but people that come into our lives and come into our sphere of influence. The first thing that we can do is be culturally responsive to whoever it is that they are. One way to do that, and it doesn't matter if the kid is from Iceland or Namibia, is make sure that we recognize that we're in front of a young person, that they already come with a skill set and a value. Whether they speak the same language or not, they still have things that they believe and assets that they bring to the table in their home language, although they're struggling before you in English class. They have a full level of proficiency and competencies, but they might not be the ones that are germane to the experience of whatever content we're bringing forth or whatever our role is in the school system in order to be able to help. Unlock them a little bit. Engage them. See where they're at, because many of our young folks have switched. It's not necessarily the carrot, right, but it is the relationship. Here's another tip that I think works really, really well and might help us understand how feel the way they do. Oh, might cut out a little bit. We're not gonna do the note.
Hey, line up! Line up! Everybody line up! We're about to race!
Ah, here we are. Perfect. These are baseline socializations. These are not indictments. This is how people move. This is the way that they've been socialized from the beginning of time. Eurocentric Americans are member to object. Not all, not exhaustively, but that's the level of socialization. It's the A, the 403B, the house, the TDA, whatever it is that keeps you chasing. And when you know that you've gotten to the end of life and you've accumulated this, then you know you've done something, and that then something is something that you have to give back. That's very noble. That's very honorable. And that's the socialization of Eurocentric Americans. Now, that's not how African Americans are socialized at all. Member to member. If my teacher loves me, I'll get an A. I had many people that poured in love to me. I got A's and B's. I was supported. I had friends. I had teams. I had coaches. It was the member to member that made me great, because I couldn't let Scotty beat me. He's fast as he could be, but man, if I could touch him, I wanted to knock him over, let him know I was out there running on the field with him. Let the game start, we put on that same jersey, we were going to run through the next team together on a collective. I am a byproduct of when a system does it right and creates those level of supports. I am member to member. All of the people that I deal with within the demographic, almost universally, are member to member. You ever heard of CPT, Colored People Time? Don't play with me. Y'all better raise your hands if you heard of it. Come on now. Everybody ever wonder why people of color always show up late to meetings? Here we go. Hands up. Come on, you can do it. You got a trust fall in that space. I'm here to catch you. The reason is they don't care about time like you care about time. You hold time up here. We hold thank you for coming to my party up here. I don't care when you got here, your presence is enough for me. Respect. I acknowledge you. You know why Tyrone comes in late with that swag? Pops up at the door every single day, 30 seconds late. Anybody got a Tyrone that they've ever taught in their career or been around, right? You're wondering what this kid's got going on. You're wondering why he's always at the clerk's desk. You're wondering why you always got to write him to pass. You're wondering why you always see him at the playground at the same time doing the same stuff in the same quarters, because he's relational. He goes with the vibrations that feel good to him. If we don't shine a light enough for the child, if we don't work with that fire, that child will find a fire and burn down the village if they don't feel the love from the light. Oftentimes, Asian Americans are member to family. Would that not support the fact that there's a Chinatown in every town in the world? It's not member to TDA. I don't care about that TDA. It's not relational capacities here. This is my family. We do not until we do here first. Not wrong. It's how they're calibrated. It's the things that factor into what their implicit bias is going to onboard or shape or, right? And then we have some people from the Middle East that are member to Scripture. So it's Jesus and God. It's the Bible. It's Yahweh and the Torah. It's Allah and the Quran that are the guiding principles and the beacons for how it is that we are supposed to move socially as people. Fellowship in these places. Honor the 10 Commandments. Make sure you read your surahs. None of this is wrong. But if I'm a salesman, I'm going to make more money than you. Because every time I engage somebody, I'm going to start engaging them in the spaces that are meaningful for them, and then I'm going to find out and actively listen, culturally responsive to the assets that they already bring to the table, and then I'm going to repurpose that energy for my goal and our collective goal of service in the paradigm of education. We want them to get them closer to the classroom. You're late, son. Nice sneakers, but you're 5 minutes late. I see you as a person. Now get you down the road. We all got a role to play in that. We can all help shepherd young people in the right way. It doesn't have to be an angry and aggressive discourse. It can be something that's done very lovingly and acknowledged and then move them on. Our kids don't understand that. I think this is also something that we can do on a regular basis. Never mind just the classroom piece. Just think of life as your classroom when you're on the job, wherever it is that you are, right? The top one says, understand your own cultural identity. Which one of those last four, right, do you most identify with? What was the conversation at the dinner table about various groups of people? How does that shape where it is that you are right now? None of that has to do with you engaging a child at all. It simply is a reflection in you excavating what happened inside socially over time and space. We have an opportunity to do our own work first. That's why it's first on top of the bubble. The next piece, right, is know your young folks well. Like in P-Town, it's different than if you say it's time for you to go to class, or Tim, don't make me call your mama because it's time for you to go to class. When I see any young person in the city of Rochester, before I even address them, my nephew, what's up? Now, if you're a nephew, you're my family, and now we are already family, so now you're going to listen to what I say like I'm in your family, and I'm the big dog, because there's levels to this. That works, too, with any youth. High standards and expectations. Okay, so not going to harp on this one, but certainly is important for our educational community. Your young folks want to see that you're willing to work as hard as it is at your job, that you have expectations that they work on theirs. I don't care if we're mowing grass for the grounds, they want to see that we're out here, not just hanging out and da-da-da-da. That professional pedigree that says I'm going to show and demonstrate my proficiencies in this space so that anybody who's using their visuals or can see, hear, and feel my presence about my work. There is certainly a level of integrity that our kids can learn from. That was the P-Town way. You get an A or B. You fight like a dog on the field. You work hard to get to the Hall of Fame. No, I'm teasing. My fault, Scotty. Build students' life experiences into the nature and the quality of your work. You know, right, that this person lost their grandma, like we shouldn't deal with them the same way at the front desk when they come in. Just give them the authentic you. I'm really sorry to hear that you got a lot going on. Let them be the next one to take a step. They take a step, you take two. We got to work on a level of engagement. It's not just about our job and our space and don't come da. Our kids need help. And when these smart kids, because trust me, I know a lot of them when I graduated from here, come out into the real world and are met with contextual situations, they don't just make it because they're smart. You don't get to just avoid all of life ills because you're smart. Smart doesn't make you make it. We got classmates that lost lives. We got classmates that have been very vocal about how they express their trials and tribulations. And because we have relational capacity, some of them we understand as well, because we have relationships with these people. Create a learning environment and a learning community. And in a lot of ways we have that. We just want to strengthen the fibers of what we're doing from the core. Some of my favorite stuff here is just the power of relational capacity. So I'll take a moment and play what I hope to be a few videos that not only demonstrate this, but make you feel good inside.
Yeah. Come on.
You hear that cadence? Hear how he riding the beat, y'all?
Hit it.
Now watch how he let his pops in.
When he gets his face. Cut it.
Yo, we got the skill, so therefore we build. We're coming through right
Foundational
now.
literacy skills, mentoring, coaching, teaching, decoding skills. We can do these things with kids from the cradle to career. We can engage them where they're at. Watch how he comes in on the 16th.
Go.
If I told you he was brilliant right now, making a lot of money at 12, 13 years old, and was really proficient in the language of standard American English, it probably wouldn't surprise you. It's hard to sing with a smile. I've seen a lot of videos. I don't oftentimes see videos with people singing and smiling at the same time. That's a core thing that happens. I don't want to, this is a level of engagement. That doesn't just have to be a fatherly level of engagement. Lock into where the kids are. Lock into what is meaningful for them. Try to figure out why it is that they like to play Fortnite. Because through Fortnite, you can lock them into said services or social emotional support or cognitive behavioral therapy if you're using the modalities of all of the things that we have that are embedded in us already that we do naturally. We don't need a fancy term to say, I know how to love a kid or I engaged a kid. How much time we spending with the youth? I'd argue quality time. You got one kid you like, comes and talks to you. 5, 50. Technical difficulties? How many years you been working? I was at P-Town when P-Town was like this. We ain't had a shiny clock. We were still Chiefs. So glad they changed the name. But we were Chiefs. That football field rafters, I felt like they had some rust on them. I don't see rust anymore. This auditorium didn't have these swanky seats. When people that come through this system, see a vision. That's me and Scotty playing ball. That's all my homies B, Pooch. Right? That's me. That's my buddy Brian building my swing set out back. These authentic relationships. How much time we taking with kids? What's it mean to us? I can tell you it means something to me. It meant that we could share a vision and a dream. Simply of possibilities. This wasn't it for me in 11th grade. Oh, I can't wait till I come back to Penfield and talk at an equity seminar. Had to have somebody willing to keep the lights on at night for me. Let me catch up. Because I'm from Post and Ravenwood. My mama got a high school degree. First generation everything. Doesn't look like there's a lot of talking going on. When we engage kids, are we listening or are we listening to reply? We always got the answer? They always got to come to us and get the key that we have? That's hogwash. And our kids are building things that we can't even see what their vision is. But all of a sudden, you get a little closer to the finish line. I've been blessed to cross a lot of finish lines. But I swear to you, every finish line that I cross, I'm looking for the next finish line. Until there's no breath in these lungs. You all are the contractors for this work. You know how happy I was to get swimming lessons last year for our summer program? So that maybe we could have life-changing experiences for young folks around water because we know that they experience natural trepidations. Because historically, they don't have big pools in the middle of the hood, other than Genesee Valley Park. Man, I got a house in the field, man. 16 of my neighbors got pools. It's not an indictment. It's just an opportunity. What are we doing to impact, to change, to affect education from our own vantage points? Everybody's got a role to play. I checked, I made sure that those were beige breeches, because at first I was like, man, is he skinny dipping? Y'all look too, don't act like you did, I seen it. But I checked already, I checked. I did my due diligence. This is important and almost at the core of everything that we should do in every moment we walk and begin to take on the role of service and education, right? We want to be selfless in this space. I want to shed everything that I am at 7 in the morning and represent myself at 8:22 when it's time to start the day. Because they deserve the best me. Valuing human welfare sounds real bland in general, but being in the pursuit of ending human suffering is actionable. What is your next level of pursuit? What step are you taking? How can you take a further step in what you do already? Free yourself from prejudice. That's a lifelong journey. That's not overnight. J. Will has things that are going on underneath there. Nobody's like, yo, that's my German and English brother up there. You don't know my mom. You can't see my mom. But it's really interesting seeing all my brothers and sisters, but all my brothers and sisters can't see me. It's been an interesting life, right? Got to maintain that professional demeanor. We're hearing it twice. That's our job. That's our role. Security guard, when I walk in my building, he looks at me and he says, "Bro, you clean every day." And I said, "I appreciate you. Somebody's watching." I'll go into Leadership Academy, all-male school of color, right? And I walk in and the young king approaches me, and as he's approaching me, I can see him and he can see me, and he's sharp brother, and Louis Vuitton and all the designer clothes down, and he comes up to me and he says, "You want to know what?" And I said, "What's up, nephew?" He said, "You look like money." Right? Now, in that moment, he told me a whole lot. He said, 1, I see you, and I'm recognizing you. 2, I appreciate the way you're presenting yourself in front of all these other young kings. Right? And 3, I'm going to try to tell you in a way in which exalts and gives up something. I'm trying to think of something you value. And the only thing I can think about is money. Right? And I said, well, I'm wearing blue, so I'm hoping I'm a $100 bill. Right? But then immediately we're able to get to the next layer of conversation. How you doing? How your grades? Do you need anything? Did you eat this morning? We already at phase 5, and I ain't been out 30 seconds in conversation with this young man. Phase 5. Not surface brush 101. The last one is seek and embrace experiences and challenges. Like everybody's in a place, but everybody has that next layer of risk zone. You don't have to teach Tyrone at 16. Go to the Boys and Girls Club and read to Tyrone at 4. So maybe you can create a Dr. Willis Tyrone Jr. Because some people in this building created a Dr. Willis in part. I appreciate you all for being not only attentive, I'm here. You can talk to me about questions that you have, experience that you're just saying, like, I don't know what happened here, could I have? But certainly for the time that we were able to spend today, I appreciate you all very much. Q&A, I will repeat your questions. I think we're all socially distanced, but if you want to take your mask off and fire away, yes, please.
I have a question on the urban subversion program, where they integrate students that live in a city, territory, residents, and they take them to suburban schools.
Without those kids coming in off the RTS bus in Penfield back in 1990, pick one, my life is different. Having that quality of people around me that kept me grounded in this space. There was only 3 people of color in my grade that lived in the township. Everybody else came off that bus in the morning. And those kids took 2 buses to get to school on time, starting at 5:30 in the morning. And some of them didn't have breakfast. I think that every school district should have an urban-suburban program and should be active in that process. I think that every school district has a part to play. So when I hear about a school district that doesn't participate in that, I just think about the people that I would have lost in my life. The Darrell Heath, the Derisha Davises, my homie Troy, Jay Hanna. Like, it was everything. So in that space, I think that it's really, really important that, 1, the school sees fit. And there's going to be some folks that say, hey, on our bottom line, when these young people with this disposition come in, you know, it affects our bottom line in terms of scoring, right? But with all the life-saving stuff it does, which one has the most weight? Right? Sometimes we got to get away from the .08s and get down to the people that represent the .08s or the 1.2s. And again, it's a testament to the way in which your executive level administration is thinking about actively being in this space of what can we do, not just the teaching staff, not just administrators, not just our grounds crew, not just the clerks, but everybody be on the same accord. You don't have to believe all this, but all this is research-based. I didn't make this up. And I think that it's very important to have that level of exposure. And I'll be honest, the kids in the school, my little Caucasian brothers right now, they don't care what their granddaddy did 3 generations ago and how they got ahead. They know the music, they do the dances, they hang out, we TikTok, we chill, we get it in, right? So it's important for a level of socialization and for other people to find out how young people move and what's important to them. That was a really good question, thank you. Anybody else? Got like 120 seconds? Bueller, yeah, fire, I'm here. We're here, let's go.
In regards to charter schools, some people view them as city schools kind of breaking off for like a take-two type of experiment. What's your views on charter schools and how do they differ from public schools?
Usually in the places and spaces where charter schools are located, not wholly, but usually, it's in a municipality that's struggling, and their data is rife for being able to say we need to think outside the box and do things a different way. Rochester is really at the top of the list of that, and that's why you find a density of charter schools here. Charter schools also are kind of like private schools and function autonomously. So I think that there is something to public education. But I do think that there are kind of one-offs and case-by-case scenarios where if it's done well and you have the right ingredients for what's going on in the charter school, that can be a really powerful experience for young folks and can also be life-changing. Certainly think that the structure and the vision and the mission, but more importantly, the content, the curriculum, and the ability to navigate readiness versus mastery versus meeting the kid where they're at is all of the work of the charter. But you know, some of that is leaky garden hose. I've been inside a charter system. I know how they grade. You know, the one thing also about a charter system is, full disclosure, you know, you can take a kid from 9th grade, 10th grade out of the city of Rochester and then say they weren't meeting performance expectations, put them right back in the city of Rochester, and you don't count for, right, that doesn't count against your graduation rate. So you'll graduate 86%, but you gave back 14% over the last 2 years, you know, so they're their own thing, but it can be done really well. Anybody else? One more question? Humbled. Thank you. Appreciate you.
I got to move the mic down. Have a great rest of the weekend and day. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you again, Dr. Willis.